This scene opens with urgency and fear as Alex arrives at Anna's home seeking refuge, immediately establishing a powerfully familiar queer narrative in which safety is found not in institutions or public spaces but in another woman's presence. And Anna's startled questions are less suspicion than concern, reflecting how women often intuit danger before it is fully articulated. Alex's request to come inside is symbolic as much as literal, marking a threshold moment where she steps out of a relationship, defined by control, and into a space where her truth can begin to breathe. And Anna's worry that Alex might still be with Mike underscores the emotional triangulation many queer women experience when disentangling themselves from compulsory heterosexual relationships. When Alex admits she has broken up with him and cannot stop his calls, the scene captures the exhausting persistence of male entitlement, and Anna's decisive act of turning off the phone becomes a small but radical assertion of boundaries, modeling the kind of protection women so often have to create for one another when systems fail. The shared fear when Mike appears outside transforms the house into both sanctuary and hiding place, echoing the lived reality of many queer women who learn early that love sometimes requires secrecy, not because it is shameful, but because it is unsafe to be seen. Their whispered conversation in the bedroom reveals the layered consequences of Alex's honesty, as coming out to Mike does not bring liberation but escalates danger, reflecting a painful truth that self-disclosure does not always yield immediate safety, especially when gendered power and entitlement are involved. Anna's suggestion to call the police and Alex's weary explanation of why that will not help exposes the systemic gaps that leave women, particularly queer women, navigating threats largely on their own, and Anna's offer that Alex stay with her is not naive heroism but a deeply human instinct to care, even when the risks are known. When Alex insists she does not want Anna harmed, the scene highlights a recurring queer tension between desire and responsibility, where loving another woman often comes with heightened vigilance rather than carefree abandon. The emotional shift occurs when Alex explains that she told Mike the truth about no longer being interested in men, a statement that is less about sexuality as label and more about self-recognition. And Anna's response is notable for its lack of shock, treating Alex's realization as something natural rather than dramatic. Their mutual hand-holding and reassurance signal a transition from crisis management to emotional intimacy, demonstrating how queer connection frequently grows out of shared vulnerability rather than grand romantic gestures. Anna's question about why she is being treated kindly reveals a quiet history of emotional deprivation, and Alex's simple admission that she likes Anna carries more weight than any declaration, resonating with queer audiences who know how rare, uncomplicated affirmation can feel. Their kiss is framed not as spectacle but as relief, a moment where fear briefly loosens its grip, and the acknowledgement that it is both of their first experiences with another woman emphasizes how queerness often emerges not through certainty, but through connection. Anna's joking question about being responsible for Alex's awakening is gently reframed by Alex's answer, which honors self-discovery as something internal that another person can illuminate but not create, countering harmful narratives that portray queerness as influence rather than identity. The danger outside never fully disappears, and that unresolved threat grounds the scene in realism, reminding viewers that queer love does not exist in a vacuum free from social consequences. By allowing tenderness to coexist with fear, the scene challenges the expectation that women loving women must be either tragic or sanitized, insisting instead on complexity. Alex embodies the queer woman breaking away from prescribed paths at personal risk, while Anna represents the first safe witness to that truth. And together, they model how emotional safety can be built even under pressure. For lesbian and LGBTQ+ audiences, this moment resonates as a recognition of how love can arrive at the exact moment it is most needed, not to erase danger but to make survival feel possible. And for women more broadly, it reflects the enduring need to be believed, protected, and chosen without condition. It also speaks to society's discomfort with seeing women choose each other as sources of strength, a discomfort rooted in the belief that women's fulfillment must remain secondary to male attachment. And this resistance persists because such stories expose how deeply gendered power structures rely on women's silence. By centering mutual care rather than conquest, the scene affirms visibility not as provocation but as truth, inviting viewers to witness queer love as lived, earned, and profoundly human. It leaves space for hope, courage, and continued becoming beyond fear, together. This scene begins in agitation and vigilance, with Alex pacing before the patio doors as her phone becomes a conduit for fear rather than connection, establishing a psychological landscape shaped by stalking, intrusion, and the exhausting aftermath of asserting boundaries. Her clipped exchange, the insistence that she is done, and the need to flee at a sudden noise situate the story in a reality many women recognize, where safety is provisional and vigilance becomes habitual. When Alex later returns home to meet Charlie, The shift from threat to possibility is deliberate and fragile, underscored by the ordinary setting of a kitchen that doubles as both workplace and refuge. Charlie's youth is acknowledged without spectacle, framed as a practical concern rather than a lure, and Alex's professionalism grounds the interaction in mutual respect even as vulnerability quietly accumulates. The conversation about the project foregrounds art as testimony, with Charlie naming how the script captures loneliness and paranoia, validating Alex's lived experience without exploiting it. Alex's brief, ill-considered physical familiarity is immediately recontextualized by Charlie's disclosure of her own history with a stalker, transforming the moment into shared recognition rather than imbalance. The scene's power lies in how trauma becomes a language of understanding, not a competition, allowing both women to be seen without being reduced to their wounds. The decision to audition a bar scene functions symbolically, placing fear, avoidance, and sudden grip at the center, and when Charlie's reaction crosses into discomfort, Alex's response is notable for its care, consent, and emphasis on safety. By stopping, checking in, and offering a hug rather than pressing forward, Alex models a feminist ethic of creation that refuses re-traumatization, a sharp contrast to cultural narratives that demand suffering for authenticity. Their mutual insistence on continuing is grounded in agency, and the casting decision emerges from trust and attunement rather than domination. As the conversation turns to inspiration, the idea of the muse is reframed away from possession toward collaboration, with Alex's willingness to change the script signaling permeability and growth. Charlie's surprise at being trusted speaks to a broader experience among young women, particularly queer women, who are often underestimated or instrumentalized, and Alex's certainty counters that pattern with belief. The kiss that follows is not a crescendo but a quiet alignment, occurring after assurances, transparency, and mutual choice, and it resonates for lesbian audiences as a depiction of desire arising from safety rather than risk. Alex's lingering paranoia, her scanning of the room, reminds viewers that healing is nonlinear, yet Charlie's calm presence offers a counterweight, suggesting that intimacy can coexist with caution. The act of locking the door reads less as isolation than as boundary-making, a reclaiming of space where women choose one another without apology. Symbolically, Alex embodies the survivor artist transforming fear into narrative, while Charlie represents the witness who understands and amplifies that truth, and together they enact a model of queer connection built on consent, care, and creative solidarity. The scene challenges societal discomfort with women loving women by refusing to eroticize or trivialize their bond, instead centering emotional labor, trust, and mutual protection, elements often dismissed when women's intimacy is minimized. That discomfort persists because such portrayals undermine assumptions that women's safety and fulfillment are secured through male presence, and here, male absence is precisely what enables clarity. For viewers, especially lesbians and queer women, the moment affirms that being seen does not require danger, that art can be a bridge rather than a wound, and that choosing each other can be an act of courage grounded in gentleness, honesty, and becoming visible together. It also speaks to broader feminist anxieties about authority, mentorship, and age, showing how care can replace hierarchy when intention is explicit, boundaries are named, and listening is prioritized. By situating creative collaboration alongside recovery, the narrative resists myths that pain must be mined relentlessly to produce art, proposing instead that healing itself can be generative. Importantly, the scene does not promise permanence or perfection, but it offers a practice of care that feels achievable, where women choose honesty over bravado and consent over impulse. In a culture that often frames lesbian intimacy as either invisible or sensational, this portrayal insists on nuance, making room for fear, courage, creativity, and quiet hope to coexist without apology. It invites audiences to imagine safety as something built together, moment by moment, through words, pauses, and choices, and in doing so affirms that visibility can be tender as well as brave, especially when women decide to protect one another and themselves. Such storytelling matters because it counters the isolation imposed by fear, reminding queer viewers that connection need not replicate harm, and that love, when grounded in care, can feel like refuge rather than risk, opening paths toward futures shaped by trust and